Hello, my name is Sigmund Freud. I was born on either March 6th or May 6th. When I graduated high school, I was interested in law or politics or even the military. However, after reading Darwin's theory of evolution, I became very interested in science. I am now a psychologist. Today, I will be discussing the topic of mental illness with Miss Karen Horney. Please introduce yourself, Miss Horney.
Guten Tag, my name is Karen Horney. I was born in 1885 near Hamburg, Germany. My mother was a prominent member of the Dutch-German family, and my father was a God-fearing fundamentalist sea captain who believed that women were inferior to men and are the primary source of evil in the world. As you might imagine, I have conflicting feelings about him. He frequently made derogatory statements about my appearance and intelligence, but he did take me on several lengthy and exciting sea voyages. At 21, I entered medical school, a decision opposed by my father. I completed medical school and then attended psychoanalytic training under the tutelage of the most prominent Freudian analysts. Eventually, I moved to New York and established the American Institute of Psychoanalysis. It was during this time that my ideas began to diverge significantly from yours, Dr. Freud.
Well, then allow me to make my case for what I firmly believe the personality consists of. I believe that the personality consists of three components: the id, ego, and superego. To me, it's all about unconscious and biological motivation. The id is entirely unconscious. The id is the force of personality. It is the drive to obtain something, for example, thirst, hunger, and sex. The id has two ways to meet these needs, either reflexive, such as a sneeze or primary process, which are irrational because they are determined by the individual's need state. The ego is basically the I. The ego is aware of the needs of both the id and the physical world. The ego's basic function is to mediate these two needs. The superego is the moral arm of the personality. The superego has two parts when it's fully developed: the conscience and the ego ideal. When the superego develops, it uses internalized values to govern thoughts and behavior. At this stage in life, the child is said to be socialized. An individual's mind can be compared to an iceberg. The conscious is at the top of the iceberg. The largest part of the berg is under the surface, which is like the unconscious. The individual is only aware of a small fraction of the mental processes. Also, the environment plays a large role in the behavior of individuals. As I said before, the superego development is when the child is considered to be socialized, and their behavior is impacted by their environment. Essentially, I believe that people are largely motivated by unconscious sexual motivation and the Oedipal complex. Miss Horney, please share your thoughts on personality with the group, would you?
Dr. Freud, I fear that your notions such as unconscious sexual motivation and the Oedipal complex and a threefold vision of the mind may have been appropriate in your setting and time in history, but it all bears too little relevance to the people of today. We are here in the United States, amidst a great and terrible depression. As I psychoanalyze my patients, I repeatedly find that it is problems such as losing their homes, their jobs, and having no money to even provide food and care for their families that is the true source of my clients' problems. I rarely find unconscious sexual conflict to be the cause of my clients' problems. Frankly, greater survival-oriented concerns abound in this day and age. I regret that I must conclude that it is those things a person experiences socially that determine whether he or she will have psychological problems, and not the intrapsychic conflict. But perhaps on one point we may agree. Psychological problems are at least in part related to disturbances in human relationships.
So, Ms. Horney, now that we have established our views on personality, it is clear that we cannot agree. What do you say we discuss mental illness?
Sounds wonderful.
In my opinion, anxiety is the mind's way of warning of impending danger. There are three types of anxiety. The first type of anxiety is objective anxiety, which arises when there is an objective threat to the person's well-being. An example of objective anxiety is being attacked by another person or dangerous animal. The second type of anxiety is neurotic anxiety. This is when the ego feels that it is going to be overwhelmed by the id. So when the id's needs become so powerful that the ego is unable to control its needs, The irrationality of the id will become overwhelming in the mind as well as on behaviors. Moral anxiety arises when one is about to violate an internalized value. This will be something like shame or guilt we feel when we act against our values that are internalized in the superego.
Once again, I assert that psychological problems have more external causes than you suggest. I do feel that your overemphasis on biology takes away from the relevance of the cultural environment. Of all the disturbed human relationships, it is that of the parent and child that is most critical. I know you agree that to the importance of early childhood experiences.
Yes, I most certainly do.
Every child has two basic needs: one, to be safe from pain, danger, or fear, and two, to have biological needs satisfied. Two eventualities exist. Either the parent lovingly satisfies the child's needs, or the parent demonstrates indifference, inconsistency, or even hatred to the child. If the former occurs, the child is on their way to normal development. If the latter, the child has experienced basic evil and is well on their way to becoming neurotic. Perhaps you would be willing to discuss coping.
Certainly. Anxiety is obviously uncomfortable to the individual. When an individual has anxiety, they want to reduce the anxiety, much like they would hunger or thirst. The ego is responsible for dealing with the anxiety. The individual needs to reduce objective anxiety. The ego will need to deal with the physical environment. When the individual needs to deal with neurotic or moral anxiety, the individual must use what I like to call defense mechanisms. Defense mechanisms have two things in common. First, they distort reality and they operate in the unconscious. There are numerous defense mechanisms. I will discuss each of them. Repression is the first I will talk about. Repression is the fundamental mechanism because it is involved with each of the others. Ideas enter the consciousness when they are discussed and enough that they no longer cause anxiety to the individual. Modified repressed ideas can be made apparent in dreams, humor, and in physical symptoms during free association and parapraxis. Next, there is displacement. Displacement is when an object or goal is replaced with one that does not provoke anxiety. People use sublimation to displace their feelings. For example, sublimation is the basis of society. We tend to focus indirectly in the form of poetry, art, religion, sports, politics, and education. There is a projection. This is when you attribute the anxiety-provoking thoughts to something or someone other than oneself. Seeing failure or undesirable urges as out there because of if one saw it within themselves, it would provoke anxiety within the individual. Fifth, there is identification. This is when one dresses, talks, or behaves the same way as someone who is successful. The person's success then becomes one's own. Sixth is rationalization. This involves giving a false rational and logical reason for failure or shortcoming. Finally, there is reaction formation. Reaction formation is when people want to do something, but it would cause anxiety. The individual then does the opposite of what they really want to. These are the ways that the mind deals with the mental illnesses, such as anxiety.
On one point we can agree: anxiety is distressing. And as you say, humans will cope one way or the other, seeking a coping strategy. In my experience, I have identified 3 major adjustment patterns to cope with anxiety. I know you also believe that the seeds of anxiety are sown in childhood. In my opinion, though, when a child experiences basic evil, that child develops hostility towards the parent, which then develops into world views. This view suggests that the world is dangerous and unpredictable. However, because a child cannot aggress against a parent, they must instead repress their hostility. This repression becomes basic anxiety. I know you have observed repression behavior too. Now to my coping mechanisms. I have observed coping in 3 types. Some people become overly compliant. I call this type moving towards people. These people think if I give in, I will not be hurt. These people need to be liked and desired and accepted. They need to be needed and taken care of. Others become hostile. I call this moving against people. They think if I have power, no one can hurt me, and often are looking to see what they can get out of a relationship. Still others move away from people and become detached. They believe that if they withdraw, nothing can hurt them. They find it crucial to put emotional distance between themselves and others, drawing a circle around themselves that no one can penetrate. I must say, though, I think that healthy individuals still use all three of these patterns. It is the neurotic that uses only one to attempt to deal with all of life's eventualities. I do feel that there is benefit to dream analysis and free association as a means to gather important information about the patient. I appreciate your contributions in this area. Have you ever considered, though, that people may have more hope for change than you have previously given them credit? My work leads me to believe that people can solve many of their own problems. You know, I plan to publish a self-help book.
Good grief. Oh, on that I cannot be flexible. I contend that it is essential for all those who attempt to analyze must first be psychoanalyzed themselves. This is fundamental to the basic principles of psychoanalysis from which I will not depart. And frankly, people are who they are. It is little that can be done to change the fundamentals of personality.
And I suppose you will not relent on your opinions about women. In my opinion, it is males who envy the female anatomy and not the other way around. If ever women appear to wish to be masculine, it is cultural equality and independence that they seek. Our whole civilization is a masculine civilization. The state, the laws, the religion, the sciences are all the creation of men.
Well, it has been good talking to you.
Guten Tag.
Bye.